Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I haven't really posted anything in a little bit, but I have something good for you. So if you're here, you're probably in the market for a MacBook. And if you are, you're probably deciding if the MacBook Air is for you. And I'm gonna tell you why it is not for most people. So if you wanna stick around, this is Ben, and let's talk. So I just want to start off with saying that my sister called me, and I'm sort of the tech guy in the family, I guess, and she wanted a new MacBook, and she asked me which one she should get, and she was looking at the new MacBook Air, and I told her not to get the new MacBook Air. I told her to get the new MacBook Pro 14-inch. And I want to give you the reasons why behind that and why I wouldn't personally get the new MacBook Air. In Canada, this MacBook Air is priced at $14.99. At that price point, you're paying for something ultra premium, and there's a lot of good features within that MacBook, but it's very, very disappointing when it's not priced the same as the old MacBook Air. And they're actually keeping the old MacBook Air in the lineup, which at the end of it, I'll tell you, is probably a better value for a lot of people. I want to start with price and what you're getting with price. And that's the biggest caveat of why I'm not going to suggest that you get the MacBook Air and maybe step up to the MacBook Pro. Or vice versa, step down to the old MacBook Air. This is what I told my sister and why I recommended for her to get the 14-inch MacBook Pro over the new Air. This new MacBook Air at $14.99 Canadian, within that price point, they're only giving you 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gigabyte hard drive. And for a lot of people, I don't think that's a baseline anymore. You look at, and I don't want to compare it to Windows, to like Apple devices, because I know they're a lot more optimized. At $600-700, you can get a Windows PC that has 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabytes of actual storage. So when you're talking about a device that in Canada is $14.99, the value proposition sort of leaves. I think when you're looking at something that's more ultra premium, the baseline should be 16 gigs of RAM, 512. They've saved that for the pros, but I think that should be the baseline when you're charging 1,500 Canadian dollars for a device. That's unacceptable, which leads me a little bit to my next point with this device. Even the hard drive. So the hard drive on the MacBook Air is 256, but it's a single NAND drive. Even the current MacBook Air they're selling in the lineup for $999 US, $12.99 Canadian, has two 128 drives, which means the speed of the hard drive on the old M1s is actually exponentially faster. I've done a speed test on the new MacBook Pro 14-inch because my sister did decide to go with the speed on the MacBook Pros are about 4.5 gigabytes write and above 5 gigabytes read speeds, right? Which is really, really crazy. That's exceptional. The speed on the actual MacBook Air M1, the old one, is about somewhere in the mid 2s for both read and writes. The speeds people are getting on the baseline MacBook Air, the new MacBook Air, the M2, is around 1.5. So you're actually getting speeds exponentially slower than the old M1 MacBook Air. And I think that's unacceptable for a device that's more expensive. And I don't know what it would cost Apple, but probably a couple dollars to actually fix that issue. If you're gonna sell M1 MacBooks that have faster storage, but you're selling a device that's more expensive, that makes absolutely no sense. So you get to a point where if you're gonna get this M2 MacBook Air, the proper way to get even the base, and what Apple should have done, would be to add 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gigabyte hard drive. And when you do that, you're at $2,000. $2,000, which now puts you at $500 away from the M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro. At that point, you start thinking, what's the better value? And I'm gonna tell you why the extra $500 is worth it that way. And if you're not looking to upgrade or get something more expensive, maybe you should step down to the M1 MacBook Air. Apple is smart. This is how they've priced it. They're forcing you. Now I'm $500 away from that other premium device, right? Their price modeling and how they set it up, Marquise Brownlee, MKBHD, had an amazing video on how Apple prices their items and how they get you to step up to the next thing. But they got us on this. You're at $2,000, and you look at the MacBook Air, you have 2 Thunderbolt ports and MagSafe now, so it's not just one that's charging. So if you want to, you have the 2 Thunderbolt ports. So if you want actual connectivity, I would say you're spending another $65 to $100 for a dongle, which the MacBook Pro already has the SD card, the HDMI, and the 3 Thunderbolt ports in addition to all those things, right? So you won't have to get the dongle. So dongle, proper hard drive, especially in this day and age for space, and 16 gigs of RAM for future proofing, you're at $2,100. I want to tell you what that extra 400 Canadian dollars will get you and why I told my sister to get the M1 Pro MacBook, the 14-inch model for $24.99 Canadian. I would say you want to also look at thermals. There is a bunch of reviews online about how it gets hot, how it thermal throttles. That's to be expected. So if you're going to get a MacBook Air, you know that at some point a fanless design is going to have some thermal throttling to ensure that the device stays safe. But people are complaining about the heat when you're putting it on your lap, right? That it does get hot when you do more extensive tasks, right? In my time using the MacBook Pro, I didn't find that to be the case. There's 2 fans in there. Actually, they never span up, to be totally honest with you. And if they did, they were very, very low that I couldn't hear it. And that's the beauty in all that, is that you have something that has actual fans in there to control the thermals. I think that helps with longevity. I think that helps with performance. That's a big one for me in the long term, right? And I wanted to, and when my sister asked me which device she should get, I told her that this device is gonna last her a lot longer than the Air would. I think, you know, devices nowadays, 5 to 7 years, if you got a premium MacBook, and I try to split it up into years, right? So it's about $500 a year if you have it for the next 5 years, and you want this to do everything that you need it to do. So I want you to know that it's gonna last these next 5 years, and anything you throw at it in the future, it's gonna go through the paces. What Mac OS needs and the ability to use the RAM, those SSD speeds, that RAM and everything is going to be super important when it comes to the future and the longevity of this device. I talked about the ports. I told you that you're going to add another $65 to $100 to get a great device. If you want to look at the video that I made about the iPad accessories, there was a beautiful U-green dongle that I still use, and that's what's connecting to my display and how I'm running Stage Manager in the back right now. Another thing that you're getting is a slightly bigger screen. So on the MacBook Air, you're getting a 13.6-inch screen. On the MacBook Pro, you're getting a 14.2-inch screen. But the biggest caveat is the screen is mini LED on the MacBook Pro, which means in my case, it matches my iPad and it's beautiful. You can get 1,000 nits of sustained brightness, true HDR, and that means you can also get up to 1,600 nits of brightness. And because of the mini LED technology and the ability to have local dimming zones, when it turns off those mini LEDs, you're gonna get a better contrast, a more beautiful picture. This screen is amazing. And on top of that, it has ProMotion. Coming from a device like the iPad Pro that has ProMotion, that has 120 Hertz, that is a big difference. I think that in itself, the screen that you're getting is worth the extra 400 bucks. But like one of those old commercials that you used to see, right? But wait, there's more. So you have this beautiful screen. You have these ports. So what's the value in that? How much more would you pay for that ProMotion display, that mini LED technology, the beautiful contrast, the true HDR, and the ports? The last piece of that puzzle and why this is so much better is the M1 Pro chip is actually better than the M2. So don't get it mistaken that the M2 is after the M1 Pro. No, the M1 Pro is known to be, and this is the base configuration MacBook, the $24.99 Canadian, is known to be about 35% to 40% more powerful. So you think about that. Maybe you don't need that today. This MacBook Pro with 35 to 40% more power than the M2 is gonna be able to run through the paces, is gonna be able to do all those, whether it's graphic or computing tasks, in the next 5 years, I believe comfortably, more so than the M2, especially more so than the base M2. So that's important. So I like to tie that into what are the main features you're getting. For that extra 500 bucks, you're getting that beautiful mini LED screen, that ProMotion display, beautiful contrast. You're getting an M1 Pro chip that is gonna be 35 to 40% faster than the M2. You're getting an SSD that is gonna be twice as fast as any M1 or M2 hard drive, I would believe so, at around 5 gigabytes per second. And I'm talking about future-proof. And lastly, you're getting ports. That's what I see in that extra 500 bucks. If you're gonna get a 512 gigabyte, if you're gonna get a 16 gigs of RAM, because the baseline M1 Pro MacBook Pro comes with 512 and 16 gigabytes. Lastly, I love, and I'm gonna throw this a little aside caveat, I love the 14-inch. It's compact, it's heavier. It has some heft to it, but it feels sturdy, and I've been running it. I have a new stand. I'm gonna be making a video on the stand behind me, but I've been running sidecar universal control on my devices with that MacBook, and on the iPad Pro, when the screen matches the MacBook Pro with that mini LED technology, it's just beautiful. There's just something about having a secondary screen, whether it's you're running sidecar to run a full secondary screen or universal control to take over your iPad, that just matches. So I've been having a great time with that. I have no real issues about the weight. I know the MacBook Air is more compact. It's an ultra portable. So if you're really looking for something like that, you do get a little bit of a drawback in that sense when you look and you step up to the MacBook Pro 14-inch. But I think that extra heft, that honestly, when I have it in my backpack, I don't really realize, right, is so much more beneficial to me. And I would take that any day of the week. What you're getting with this MacBook Pro is a device that has everything that you wanted from the MacBook Air. I wanted, if the MacBook Air was 512 gigabytes, 16 gigs of RAM, and had a ProMotion display, even at that size, I think I would steer that way at that price point. I would steer that way just because I'd carry a dongle because of the lightness. I love it. But when I find out that you need to upgrade to make sure that it is not a hamstrung device and it's gonna be $2,000, that's a hard pill to swallow. And Apple, you played that really, really well. So we're arguing about, hey, now you should spend another 500 bucks on top of the 500 bucks to upgrade your device. So now we're spending 1,000 bucks, but you played it really well. You know what you're doing. Other options, spend 200 less. And the reason with that is the old MacBook Air is still a great device. They go on sale. You might get $200, $300, $400 off. With the updated SSD speeds, the M1 chip still being really, really good. I'm gonna be editing this video on the M1 chip. I would say save a couple bucks. The price point for the Air just at this time, it's in such a weird space that it doesn't make sense to me. I can't figure it out. For what you're getting for that price, it's a little much. And I know some people are just gonna love the design. They're just gonna check emails. They don't really care about anything else. And they're like, you know, I'll still spend 200 bucks more. I don't transfer large files. I don't really care about the SSD speed. I'm not editing videos. I'm not super worried about thermals. And you want to spend the extra 200, 300, 400 bucks depending on the sale on the M1 MacBook Air, go for it. If you love an ultra portable device, you love the look of it. Trust me, I've spent more on things that I thought looked cool. I'm not gonna knock that. I'm just saying in my use case, where I do video edit, I do all these different things, the M1 Pro made a lot more sense for the version of the MacBook Air that I have to get. The moment you start upgrading the MacBook Air, you should probably be looking somewhere else. And if you're trying to save a few bucks, and the old M1 MacBook Airs are still beautiful, they're still relevant, they still work wonderfully, maybe that's the direction you can go at, because you can get great sales there. Congrats to my sister, I'm a little jealous. I dropped it off to her camping and she's gotten to use it. And I'm pretty sure she's gonna love it, and she's gonna have it for the next 5, 7, actually it's my sister, probably 25 years, the way she uses a computer, right? So again, thank you guys. If you like this video, you know, like, subscribe. I'm gonna have more videos out here for you guys. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you.